Hello, everyone, and welcome to another webinar by the Anglo. Today, we're going to be joined by Hugo Fabila. He has been involved in the ELT world for over 15 years. He holds ICELT and Proficiency certificates from Cambridge University. He carried out studies in linguistics at the UAM, Iztapalapa, fostering his love for formal linguistics. And of course, at the Anglo, he has worked as Research and Development Coordinator, Branch Supervisor, and Branch Manager. He's currently working as an academic manager, leading a dream team that oversees classes with the Academic Delivery Business Division. And of course, he's going to be telling us today about how we can connect the dots between English and Spanish. So if you struggle with the differences between English and Spanish, you're here in the right place. Hugo, it is a pleasure to have you with us today. We are really, really excited. There he is, the star of the show.
Thank you very much. Start the
Great.
show.
Yes.
Thank you.
Take it away.
Thank you, Emily. So we are going to start. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We'll give a couple of minutes so everyone settles down, settles in. Welcome, everyone. Okie dokie. So we're going to start now. First and foremost, important. Are you ready to connect the dots? If you're ready to connect the dots, it's very simple. And this is how we're going to be working here during this session. You're going to react, or we are going to interact through Teams reactions. If you look at the top right corner of your screen, you will see a reactions button that will allow you to react in such a way, either with a certain, well, with a group of emojis. So react with those emojis every time I ask you to, so I know that you are following the chat and that you are participating, actively participating, okay? So if you're ready to connect the dots, Emily, you're gonna help me here because I cannot see the reactions, nor can I see the chat, but I trust you.
I'm here for you guys.
Excellent, excellent, Emily. Please react, everyone, react with your thumb up emoji, so I know that you're following me and that you're ready to connect the dots with me. Have you reaction so far? Are they reacting? Did they find the button they need to find? I hope so.
Excellent. So many people are ready. That's great.
Excellent. That's good. That's great. So let's start, shall we? As I told you, we're going to start connecting the dots, but before I want you to answer some questions for me. Have you ever thought English is a language too difficult to learn? If that is the case, please react with a heart emoji, please. Let's see how many reactions. If English is a language too difficult to learn, that's what you think. Hopefully not too many hearts, Emily.
Yeah, that's great, eh? I'm glad to see that.
Okay. Have you ever thought that no matter how hard you study, you cannot improve? If so, react with your clap emoji, please, using the reactions buttons on Teams. Not too many. That's good. Have you ever thought that pronunciation is hard for you to emulate? If so, react surprised using the buttons. The emoji, sorry. Nope. And have you ever thought that English and Spanish are so different from one another that you will never be able to speak or write English independently? If so, react with the laughing emoji, please. I guess people are not very much into drama, Emily, today, or they're very, very certain of themselves, which is a good thing.
That is great. I agree.
Well, either that or they haven't found the reaction button. But I don't think that's the case, so don't worry. Well, if you have said yes to any of these questions, I am going to invoke the laughing emoji because let me tell you that you are wrong. You're dead wrong. Those statements or those questions are, if you answer them affirmatively, you're totally wrong. Why? Because it's very simple. Let me provide you with some background. Many, many years ago, there were two sciences which you probably hated back at school, unless you love them, which is weird. But we had biology and we also had chemistry. These two sciences took it upon themselves to start, obviously, observing the world that we live in and started categorizing or putting certain groups of organisms or elements together. Biology did that with living organisms. It organized them and they put them together in orders of species, kingdoms, etc. Whereas chemistry did the same, but with the elements that can be found on this planet, on planet Earth. So they decided that all of them shared elements in common, although some of them had certain differences, but they were altogether chemical elements. So there was another science that drew from that experience, from the things biology and chemistry were doing, and that's linguistics. Okay? Linguistics did also something extraordinary and quite interesting. So it's a science, I presume, linguistics. First and foremost, I need you to answer this question. What does linguistics do, in your opinion? In order for you to answer this question, I need you to answer through the chat the option that you think is correct to the question, what does linguistics do? So option A says that it studies how languages work and what they are made of. Option B, it studies how people interact with each other using language. Option C, it's used to help people learn a different language. Or option D, all of the above. Go ahead and answer through the chat what you think the correct option is.
Arturo
Evelyn?
says D. Anna also agrees. So does
Okay.
Juan. We have lots of D's here.
A lot of D's.
Karen
Good.
too. Mauricio though says A. Veronica says D. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the overwhelming majority is D.
Yeah, excellent. Very good. It was an easy question to answer, and yes, you're right. It's all of the above. However, congratulations, everyone. It was letter D. However, today we are going to focus only on the letter A, the part of linguistics that studies how languages work and what they are made of. This is something that is very interesting for us today. Um, well, we all agreed that linguistics is a science, just as any other science, although probably not using the instruments that can be seen in that picture. So forget about them. No, this is not how we study language. We study language by observing what they have, how they are, built, and how they are used, etc. In that study, we can make the distinction of typology and universals. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about them. Universals, since we know that this is a science, we can claim certain things to happen universally. That means to all of the languages, like the general universal claims. These say, for example, that all languages have methods for forming questions. It doesn't matter the language, all of them, according to this claim, uh, have ways of forming questions. Another example would be that all languages have vowels. Regardless of the language, they all have these vowel sounds. There are also certain claims that are more restricted, which means that they can be true for most of the languages, but not for all of them. And the number in which these claims are not true is very limited, the number of languages. So, for example, we can say that if a language, it works with this, this method, if then. If a language has the phoneme t, then it also has the phoneme k. So this is what the claim says, but we know that there might be a language out there that does not follow this universal strictly. We also have the types of languages, that's why it's called typology, in which basically we do a categorization. For example, we can talk about the order in which the words are present in sentences or in the language per se, which we are going to refer to as word order, and also the presence or absence of a subject that we can actually hear. So to illustrate the first part, I am going to talk to you, to show you, sorry, three letters, okay? These are yellow letters, and I want you to use the chat box to tell Emily what you think these letters stand for. So we have the letter S, the letter V, and the letter O. What do you think they stand for? Are we getting any answers, Emily?
They're thinking, they're thinking.
Okay,
Okay, Anna says spelling, vocabulary, and organization.
wrong, but you can give it another go. Remember, we're talking about word order, the order in
Elizabeth,
which words appear.
Elizabeth says subject, verb, object. And Estefania and Mauricio and Veronica all agree.
Excellent, very good, excellent. Yes, we are talking about the subject, the verb, and the object. For example, we have certain sentences here that illustrates this. Sara or ella estudia inglés. Sarah or she studies English. Sarah this is a different language, pay attention. Well, a stranger language than the one you would think. Sarah wa eigo o benkyoshimasu. That's Japanese, guys. Obviously, my pronunciation must be very poor, but bear with me, okay? It's not a language that I'm familiar with. So in Japanese, if we look closely, eigo is English. So we see that the number one, estudia, is the verb, that the number two, studies, is the verb, but in number three, eigo is not the verb. The verb is benkyoshimasu, which is study. It means study. So the little letters that you see there, the little wa and o that you see there in orange, are little particles to introduce these parts of speech. So eigo is English and study, well, benkyoshimasu is study. So we can say, or it's safe to say that in Japanese, a different word order is followed. In Japanese, we have subject, object, verb, which should be very interesting. At least you now know that in English, just as in Spanish, we follow the subject, verb, object, although in English it's a little bit more rigid than it is in Spanish. So let's continue with these examples. I think we can use them a little bit more because now I want you to focus on the yellow part of the words at the center of the verbs. Estudia has a yellow part that is the A, and studies has a yellow part that is the ES. I am going to show you more examples. Sara leyó el texto, and Sara or she read the text. The first three verbs that appear there contain yellow parts. A, es, o. Why do you think that is? Can you answer in the chat? Remember,
You're,
it's
make,
two languages.
you're making them think. You're making them think,
That's good.
Hugo. Mauricio says conjugations.
Conjugations, that's good. That's good. Because
And
notice that the last one doesn't have anything in yellow.
Anna says the ending or conjugation of verbs.
Exactly. Very good. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Exactly. The first three sentences show us that the verbs are being conjugated as opposed into A, but which is not safe to say that it's not being conjugated. It is conjugated, but it doesn't change the form. So you can say Sarah wrote the text or Sarah edited the text, but there is no substantial change in the verb as opposed to the first three examples. So keep that in mind because now we are talking about the presence, or we are going to start talking about the presence of an audible subject, a subject that we can actually hear. Okay, and pay attention to the words in parentheses. They're going to be important soon. So we are talking about subjects that we can hear. So we are going to start using examples from four languages: Spanish, Italian, English, and French. We're going to start with English because let's face it, is the language that you are aiming at learning and that you are practicing likely every day. So we have here, you will see a man and he will see a man. Okay, two perfectly normal sentences. In Spanish, that same sentence would be verás a un hombre o verá a un hombre. Tú verás a un hombre o él verá a un hombre. The yellow letters appear there again. In Italian, that same sentence is vedrai un uomo o vedrà un uomo. Tu vedrai un uomo, lui vedrà un uomo. In French, on the contrary, is tu verras un homme, il verra un homme. So what can you tell me? What can we infer from this? Notice please the letters in orange and in yellow. Has anyone got an idea that would like to express on the chat? Also note the parentheses. You have time to think about it, don't worry.
They're observing, they're thinking.
That's good, Emily. That's great.
Yes.
That's the first thing science needs, observation.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Mauricio is the first to answer. He says English uses an extra word.
Okay, good, good. It uses an extra word. That's true. There might be something else there.
Anna says that the orange needs an auxiliary.
Probably, but not really. Remember that I told you about the audible subject, the subject that we can hear. So let's move to the listening plane. English, you will see a man. He will see a man. Now listen to the French. Tu verras un homme. Il verra un homme. So the sound verra is practically the same. Even though in French we have an S in the first one, tu verras, we also say il verra, which means the pronunciation is basically the same, just as in English, we'll see, we'll see. So what can you say by knowing that information?
Veronica says that in Spanish and Italian, you don't need the pronoun to understand.
Exactly, Veronica. You hit the jackpot. In Spanish and Italian, we don't need the pronoun, which means we don't need the subject per se, although we know that the subject is there. And we know that the subject is there because the verb is giving us that information. The verb contains something called tense, aspect, and mood within it that tells us who we are talking about. Therefore, it is not always necessary, okay? As opposed to English and French, where the pronunciation makes it unclear to see or to understand who we are talking about. Therefore, English and French are languages where the subject needs to be there most of the times, okay? Well, actually, almost all the time. Let's look at this other example. Escribió una carta versus wrote a letter. Escribió una carta, wrote a letter. So who is the subject for each of these sentences? If we look at escribió una carta, we could easily infer that we have a certain subject. Can you type in the chat box subjects for escribió una carta?
Mauricio says él o ella. Claudia says ella. Veronica agrees. Él o ella.
Excellent. So let's see. Él, ella, Juan, Gustavo, Elisa, Maria, all of them could be a possible subject for that sentence. Escribió una carta. Why? Because the O, escribió, is telling us that information. That's contained within the verb. Sorry, but how about the sentence wrote a letter? Emily, you would agree with me that if someone came to you and they said, wrote a letter, they would tell you, wrote a letter, you would immediately ask,
Ooh.
oh, right? Because it's
Exactly.
not something you would typically hear in English. So guys,
Exactly.
give me a subject for that sentence in the chat box, right? Type a subject for that sentence.
Magali says he or she. As a question, Arturo says you could say it as who, but Veronica says you could say anyone. Claudia says they.
Excellent, very good. So we already know that in Spanish, all of them agree with the third person singular. In English, it could be Brian, it could be Emily, our beautiful hostess today. It could be Sandra, it could be they, not necessarily a third person. It could be we, I mean singular. It could be we, it could be I wrote a letter. They all have the same verb form. which makes it difficult to figure out who the subject is. That is why English needs to have a subject all the time, okay? Let's start connecting the dots, everyone. What do these two photographs have in common, or the people in these two photographs have in common? Type the answer in the chat box, please.
Elizabeth says they're both surprised, and Arturo agrees.
They're
Karen
both
says
surprised.
they have this reaction, and Vero says too. Roman agrees. Surprise, surprise, surprise.
Exactly. That tends to happen when you connect the dots because you start coming to the realization of something. You're like, ah, that's it. That's what happens when you connect the dots. So they're happily married. I mean, these sentences have nothing to do with the photos, although, I mean, she could be a cougar. But yeah, the photos have nothing to do with the sentences. They're happily married. Take a look at that. We could say in Spanish, están felizmente casados. Those pictures are slightly different. Esas fotografías son ligeramente diferentes. Or children are easily distracted these days. Los niños se distraen fácilmente. So we can see a very, very evident similarity between English and Spanish, that they both have this little suffix, we call it, this little thingy that is attached to the word in order to transform it into an adverb. In English, we have le, in Spanish, we have mente. So that's also important to notice. You have to start paying attention to these things. So adjectives and nouns. We have hay un perro muy grande afuera. There is a very big dog outside. We also have vive en una casa antigua, and she lives in an old house. So talking about adjectives, grande, antiguo, where does the adjective come in Spanish, typically in Spanish? Before or after the subject? Type your answer in the chat box, please.
Veronica says after. And so there's Roman, Estefania, they all agree after. But Santos says before.
It could also come before. That's why I said that word order in Spanish is not very rigid. It can change. However, in English, when does it come? Please tell me. Tell me in the chat. Where do adjectives come?
Roman, Miriam, Santos, Mauricio, Karen, Juan, they all say before.
Before the noun. Excellent, excellent, very good. So these little rules and these little things that are very often very common, it's something that we need to observe. For example, in Spanish we say nación, in English we say nation, in Spanish we say organización, organization in English, imitación, imitation. So these endings also give us a very good clue as to what kind of part of speech we're talking about. Here we're talking about nouns, and they generally could be translated that way, okay, with the same ending. Now, this is an example that came up in one of the classes I taught one of these days. This person said, we need 2 additional days, which would translate to necesitamos 2 días adicionales. By reacting with a heart, if you think it's correct, use a heart. If you think 1A is incorrect, use a thumb up emoji, please. Incorrect, thumb up emoji. Correct, heart emoji. How did we do?
I saw lots of thumbs ups.
Okay, so a lot of people think it's incorrect, right? And they would be right.
Yes, good
They would be
job.
right because in English, adjectives are never plural. They are never pluralized. Adjectives remain singular, even though the noun and everything around them might be plural. Like in this sentence, adjectives never are. Okay? So good that you know about that. So now we are moving to thinking things that are same but different, different but same. We have verbs like wait, versus hope versus expect, which all of them kind of like convey the same meaning, but they're different, so they're not the same per se. And you might say, like, why do English speakers have three different words for verbs that mean more or less the same? Well, hello, people, they have the verb to be, which we translated into two different verbs, into ser or estar. Also, we have love. Well, they have love, and we in Spanish, we have amar and querer. That if you know that Jose Jose song, you know the difference, obviously. And also letter D, where versus use. Who can type an example of each? Choose whichever, A, B, C, or D. Type an example of any verb that you might see there, please.
While they're typing, I have to say, oof, ser and estar, as somebody who's learning Spanish, they kill me. Oh, my goodness, to this day.
Yeah, that's right. Could be.
Yes.
So they're already typing, right?
Yes, we've got Estefania. Please, if you chose D, that's great. Just put an example either with where or use. Okay. Elizabeth says, I waited for 2 hours.
I waited for 2 hours. Yeah, that's not good. It's
Yeah.
gonna curse a little bit, but no, that's not good.
Elena says, I hope you are doing great.
Excellent, very good. So you can see the difference. Okay, so let's show you some examples. Because in A, talking about the verbs in A, you can wait for the bus, you can hope to win a contest, you can expect results in sales, but they're different. You know, the vibe is different for each verb. In letter B, you can say that he is in love, which in Spanish we would say está enamorado. But in letter B, he is at the supermarket, está en el super. He is tall, we wouldn't say, we would say está alto, but, o es alto. Well, it's just a mix. It's weird. Now I understand you, Emily. I cannot even begin to explain it. You can love your friends, you can love your spouse, or you can love dogs, but that has a different meaning depending in Spanish on whether you use querer or amar. Okay, so we know. And in D, we can wear a blouse or glasses or earrings, or you can wear your hair a certain way, but you have to use a spoon or scissors or a cell phone, and you can use some help or you can use a hand. But those are idiomatic expressions. Okay, but yeah, so these verbs we need to pay attention as to the slight but important differences that they can carry in meaning. So peculiarities, very quickly, guys, react. For all of those who in the following examples think that the correct answer is A, please a thumb up emoji. And for letter B, for those of you who think it's letter B, a heart emoji. All right, let's see. No creo que venga. These are real examples said by real life students. No creo que venga, we have A, I think he won't come, or B, I don't think he will come. So what do you think? A or B?
We're getting lots of hearts.
Lots of hearts. That's correct. Is I don't think he will come. In English, we kind of like negate the verb think and not the verb will come. Okay. So estoy de acuerdo, a classic one. We have A, I agree, or B, I am agree. What do you think?
Lots of thumbs ups.
Okay, very good. Tengo hambre. I am hungry, or I have hungry.
These guys are good, eh? We got lots of thumbs ups.
Excellent, very good. Este me gusta más. I like this one more, or this likes me more.
Ooh, thumbs up.
Excellent, guys.
100%.
Same method, but different emoji. Clapping emoji for A, surprise emoji for B. I love, how would you say it? Stranger things, or would you say a stranger things?
The
Stranger or a
majority
stranger?
clap. The majority clap, although I did see a surprised face around there. The
Be
majority clap.
careful, guys. Thank you, Emily. Be careful, guys. Remember that these, we call them clusters, especially at the beginning of the word. ST, we are not familiar with those in Spanish because we don't have them. So we immediately feel the need to use a vowel sound there, like a. Instead of saying strong, students tend to say a strong, but do not do that. Strategy, stray, my straight, do not say my street or a stray or a strategy, that would be wrong. Go for strong, strategy, stray, street, okay? Also, they had to sell the merchandise. Look at that. Would it be half off or would it be middle of the price? An actual example that somebody said. Which one is it?
I see lots of clapping.
Lots of clapping. Good. Excellent.
Great.
Another one. If we agree on something, we are A, on the same page, or B, on the same channel.
Mostly clapping, but we have a surprise face, a couple of surprise faces around there.
Okay, that's because in Spanish, we do tend to say en el mismo canal, so we tend to transfer that to L2, to English. But in English, it would be more common to say on the same page, okay? So that's also something you need to pay attention to, common phrases, idioms, all right? So don't forget, guys, very, very important. Listen closely to what's being said on TV shows, movies. We all know that you love TV shows and movies and to marathon on these platforms. Listen closely to what people are saying. Try watching with English subtitles on. That's very important because as you listen, you're also reading the things that they're saying and you realize how they pronounce it, and even your spelling can improve. Pay attention to the pronunciation and to the grammar is organized. That's very, very important. And also, look, use your eyes as well as your ears. Look for further similarities and differences between Spanish or your own language, if you're here but your native language is not Spanish, and English. Look for similarities and also for differences. Try to read as many books and articles and magazines, etc., in English. Do not cheat. Do it in English so you can gain more vocabulary. Pay close attention to the spelling of the words and to how phrases are used and in what context. That is actually scientific, scientific duties. Paying close attention, observing which context they are in and how they're pronounced. So you will improve a lot if you start paying close attention. But more importantly, don't forget, this is the takeaway here. Don't be afraid of making mistakes because sometimes you are too shy and you don't want to say or to write anything. So jump at every opportunity you have for speaking or writing. And practice makes perfect. Remember that. If you don't practice, if you don't dare to, to start doing things, you probably won't succeed in learning anything further. Okay, so thank you. Thank you very much for being here today. And type your questions in the chat box if there are any. Thank you for your attention.
Hi, Hugo. Amazing. Thank you so much. This was really informative. I'm sure everybody else feels the same. You know, we know that there are differences, but I think so many times we forget about the similarities there are between the two languages. And it's important to remember that we can have similarities between the two languages as well as differences. And as you said, if we observe and our scientific and our method for learning another language, we can use those differences and similarities to really help us advance further, right? So excellent. Thank you so much, Hugo.